Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Sherinian with the United Nations Foundation. And we're going to shift a conversation to one of the most important conversations that can happen around the world today. And it's one that involves the issue of maternal and child health. And leading our conversation will be three mothers, three online moms, three leaders in this space, and pioneers who are making sure that the issue stays at the top of the agenda where it should be. Please help me in welcoming to the stage a conversation between CEO of the United Nations Foundation, Kathy Calvin, Christy Turlington, and Heather Armstrong.
Good afternoon. I know you saw Ted Turner earlier, and I'm glad to be here now. And wasn't that great with Raj Shah? I'm so proud that our government is not just a talk about it, but do something about it kind of government. Let's give Raj Shah another hand. So you're about to get a really fun experience of listening to two women who've just traveled to Bangladesh to look at the plight of mothers around the world, talk about what drew them to this, what they're doing about it, and what anybody else can do about it. So they're pretty special women. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, then we're going to look at a quick video clip, and then I'm just going to ask them to talk about how they think about this challenge every single day. So the first one is Christy Turlington Burns. You probably know Christy as a model from way back, but this is a woman who is not just a model. She's gone to school. She's produced a film. She's become a major advocate on maternal health. She's started her own organization to bring others to the table so that everybody can make a difference in maternal health. And she's become a leading advocate for taking on the issue of maternal health and women and children around the world. And we're really lucky to have her today. With her is Heather Armstrong, who's one of the leading mommy bloggers. Now, this is somebody who gets up every day and is getting her message out and talking about what she's doing and what others can do. And she's become one of the leading inspirations. She's also an author, and you'll be interested to hear about how she's come to this world and what she's learned from it. But we're going to start by taking a look at a teaser from Christy's film, No Woman, No Cry. So let's start with that.
The day my daughter was born was one of the greatest days of my life. But it also became the scariest. While I got the care I needed, too many women don't.
So Christy, when you made that film, you were moved to tell the story of so many women around the world. You've now had several years to have people react to the film and talk to you about it. In 2011, where do you think we are with this issue, and what do we need to do to keep the issue moving?
Well, I had my daughter that you see on the screen in the beginning of that teaser almost 8 years ago. And the complication that I had, I learned shortly thereafter, was the leading cause of maternal deaths around the world. And I learned at that point that hundreds of thousands of women were dying every year from preventable causes. And knowing that, having survived a fairly simple intervention, I just had to do something about it. And to me, you know, given that I was able to travel to many countries around the world and to look at the programs that are working firsthand, and to really see what conditions women were delivering their children around the world, I felt that I had to do something, and I felt that a film was maybe one of the best ways that I could bring those plights of women to all of us, to each of us, as close as we could possibly bring it. I wanted it to be out in 2010 because 2010 was a very important year for maternal health. It was on the agenda of the G8 for the first time ever in Canada, the summer before last. It's the last 5 years of the Millennium Development Goals, and I knew that this was an important push, last push to make to achieve some of these goals, because MDG 5, which is to improve maternal health and reduce maternal mortality, is the goal that has been lagging behind all 8 other goals. And this seems so disheartening for me, because I find maternal health is really the heart of all of the Millennium Development Goals. I mean, this is the connective tissue. If a mom is not well, if a mom does not survive, then the chances of her children's survival and their access to education, vaccines, and a whole host of other developmental challenges will not be met. And so 2010 was important, and there were a lot of incredible commitments that were given and that have been sort of stressed upon, and there was a momentum built. But 2011, it's important that we just keep those commitments going, that we make sure that people come through with their promises, that governments don't forget this wasn't the issue of 2010, this is the issue of every year. This is continuing to be an urgent issue every year. And even in the Horn of Africa, as Administrator Shaw was just talking about, these are thousands and thousands of women who are lactating right now and who are not able to feed their babies, and who are having to make that decision that he mentioned, that triage of who can I take with me and who can I not, who will survive and who won't. And these are decisions that no mother should have to make. So that's my goal, is to continue to use the film as a platform to continue to raise awareness around these issues that are daily a challenge, but particularly in specific areas of the world are incredibly challenging right now.
And then you founded Every Mother Counts, so that you would have an opportunity to have others join you and think about these issues and find ways to support it. How does that work, and how could others in this audience who are listening and thinking about this participate?
Sure. Well, at the end of making the film, I thought it's great to make a documentary film about a social issue, and you get people to be hopefully moved emotionally and to want to do something. And I found that even in the early screenings that I had of the film, people would say, well, what can I do? What can I do? I didn't know this was a problem still. I didn't realize that women were still dying in childbirth here or anywhere else. And so the advocacy organization was really created as a place to sort of further that education, to deepen the knowledge of what people who are interested and wanted to do something, to just go that much deeper. So we have education modules on our site, and it's really a resource for people who want to go deeper into the statistics around which countries and what's happening where. And we also highlight what's happening, what's working in the countries that we have been watching. As well, we wanted to invite new audiences, because I was finding in the 8 years or so that I've been involved in this space that a lot of conversations are happening, but they're happening in a few different forums, and they're happening at a very high level or a very treetops level, and they're not happening enough on the ground, if not in the countries where the problems and the statistics are the greatest, but not happening here, where I think, like myself, my experience of having gone through childbirth, having had a complication, but seeing how the difference of having qualified healthcare workers at my side to be able to manage and to notice when something's going wrong, to be able to manage and intervene when it's necessary medically, is such a gift, and it's such a privilege that most of us in this country are lucky to have. So for me, it's really, this campaign, Every Mother Counts, is really, it's to help make an impact towards MDG goals, which are 2015, and we have a few years to go, but a lot of work ahead of us, to engage new participation, people that might not be your obvious suspects amongst the maternal health advocacy world, but also to say that we can do this. If we come together and our voices collectively can make a much bigger impact than they can on our own. So to invite participation.
So you reached out to invite somebody special to learn a little bit more with you, and that's Heather Armstrong. And you two went to Bangladesh. I'd love to know how you guys came together. And first of all, these are pictures Heather took when they went to Bangladesh, so you'll enjoy seeing them on the screen as we're talking. But maybe you tell the story first, and then Heather, come in and tell it from your perspective, and maybe a little bit more about what happened when you first went out to see this in person.
I've been traveling with No Woman, No Cry since 2010, since the spring when I premiered it at the Tribeca Film Festival. And a month or so before I was supposed to go to Salt Lake City, which is where Heather lives, I read an article in the New York Times, and it was about mommy bloggers, and it was about how some mommy bloggers had been able to really make what they do really legitimate, and to be able to monetize it, and to be able to really just, to do something with the popularity and the influence that they had earned. And she was highlighted in this article, and I was so interested in the article, but then I thought, oh, she lives in Salt Lake City, and I'm going to Salt Lake City in a few weeks. Maybe she'll come to see my screening. So I invited her over Twitter, and she responded, and she said, sure, I'd love to come. And so we met very briefly after the screening, but when I asked, as I do in every Q&A that I have, when people say, what can I do? I say, use your voice. Whatever you have, whatever your skill set is, we all have something that we can contribute. And she said, I have a voice. I can do something. So she wrote a great piece about the film, and, and just got the issue. It resonated with her. And then after I read what she'd written about the film, I thought, we were planning a trip to Bangladesh, and I thought, I wonder if Heather will go to Bangladesh with me. Let me ask her if she'll go to Bangladesh with me. And I said, do you want to go to Bangladesh? Sure. So she's a yes person, I've decided. And now she's going to run the marathon with me in a month's time. So this is your go-to gal for...
Don't ask me to jump
my
off a
go-to
bridge.
gal.
Okay, where does this end?
No bridges.
No bridges.
So what's your version?
My version is I prepared to have, I was 30 weeks pregnant with my second kid, and I did some research, which, a lot of American women my age don't do before they have children. They're just, my doctor will take care of me. I actually was sent a book by Ricky Lake's publisher, her book about Your Best Birth, and I realized that the attitude toward pregnancy and delivery in this country is as backwards, if not more, than in some developing countries. And so I actually went and had a natural childbirth with my second kid in front of a group of doctors and nurses who had never witnessed one before.
Wow.
And I realized then that this was a bigger issue, and I had heard about Christy's film. And so when she contacted me via Twitter, my husband was really, really excited. He was like, what?
Come on,
I
not
love
real.
your job. You can write about my vasectomy all the time. And so I was like, well, let's go see her film. And the film is what I think, the best part about Christy's film is what I think is what mommy blogging is all about, is that there are these problems going on in these parts of the world, but she brings you their stories and their faces. And you get to meet them and their children, and you get to meet their sisters and their husbands. And so all of a sudden you're finding yourself caring about this person in Tanzania who has to get in a car after being in labor for 3 days to go have her child. And you're just hoping. And in the film, there's a little bit of drama where you don't know what's going to happen. And so you realize this is going on all the time. And I had to write about the film, especially since the experience, very spiritual, and I'm not religious, but it was a very spiritual experience that I had with the birth of my second kid. So I really wanted to highlight the film, and I found immense success through blogging, and what social good is there in blogging other than to make people feel less alone? But here I have this platform. What can I do with it? Because yes, it supports my family, but I want to do something bigger with it. Mm-hmm. And for me, I saw this as this is the edge that I can dive off of into something bigger and greater. And I'm so grateful for her to give me the opportunity to do something like this.
So I was moved by one of your feeds after a session in Bangladesh where a man turned to you and said, after he was telling you his story, he said to you, and you, I guess, asked, what can we do? And he said, well, what can you do?
Right.
How did you feel, and what did that make you want to do when you got home?
Well, we sat there, and this is actually the village where it happened. They had mapped out a map of the village, and there were marks where there were pregnant women and women who had given birth. So they kept track of everything on this handwritten map of the babies are here, and the nursing mothers are here, and the pregnant women are here. And they had this elaborate system that just blew my mind, and they told us all about it. And then we sort of sat around and said, well, do you have any questions for us? And he said, well, yes. What can you do for us? And I thought, well, I flew across the world, and I'm sitting here in front of you, and oh my God, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And so what I do best is I tell stories. What I do best is I write stories. And so I said to him, I'll take your story back and I'll share it with my readers. And I know that my readers will be moved by what you've just told me to do something in their own lives, which should hopefully have a ripple effect back to you in some way.
Wow. You know, I just heard somebody say, facts tell, but stories sell. And you guys are both master storytellers, it's clear. How do folks here at the Social Good Summit think about using this technology and this new social medium to change the world more? I mean, is it about storytelling? Do you need to have an authentic experience? Do you need to give people something to do? How do you think about using this to generate real change and participation?
I mean, it's a little bit of all of those things. I think it's not practical for everyone to be able to have that authentic experience themselves. It's not practical for everyone to get on a plane and travel around the world to go and see what Heather saw. But people can live vicariously through those stories, and if you're a good storyteller, then it is almost as good as being there. And I feel like when you do take a statistic and you bring it back to the personal and the human side of it. I mean, when I've shown my film at the World Bank, for example, when the conversation is about statistics and about the lack of, or the loss of productivity when a woman dies, that's all very practical, and it's made a real impact in this community. However, it takes you away from that individual story that this is a mother, this is a sister, it's somebody's daughter, it's somebody's cousin, it's somebody, you know, we need to bring it back as close as we can to ourselves, I think, for us to be able to really, you know, put our feet in the shoes of another person, another soul. And then, you know, the authentic experience is really in listening to what comes out of you and what is it that I can do. We all can't do everything, but we all can do something, and we can all do, no matter how small, any act of trying to change the way that it is that wellness, general wellness and well-being for every person on this planet. It's not about some of us doing okay and some of us not. It's about we all have to do this together. And I see that so much with my travels, and I relate every mother's experience back to my own. And some people say, well, how do you as a supermodel relate to a mom? And I really don't see myself as a supermodel, first of all, but I see myself as a human being first. I see myself as a mom and a woman. And on those levels, I can relate to any person on this planet, and we all can. And I think the more we try to put ourselves in those positions and to see, you know, what is it to make those choices? How do I choose between allowing my child to have an education and having food one meal today? You know, those simple questions, I think we just need to ask ourselves those more regularly.
Heather, what are your followers saying to you? What's this done with them?
You know, the majority of them are thrilled that I'm doing something, you know, other than talking about farts and poop. I'm actually doing something
for everything.
With writing. And a lot of them actually, like I was mentioning earlier, like I actually got an email from someone as far as Antarctica who was taking care of penguins, who was like, I really had no idea that women were still routinely dying because they didn't have access to medical care. And my community, we raised about $18,000 that we sent to Save the Children, who were going to go train 4 or 5 midwives to go back to Bangladesh and work in those communities. That's how hands-on, like my audience as well, since you're the one who went and did the work, meaning I went and actually saw the hands-on experience and you're telling us the story, we can work through you. And I'd like to show, you know, my readers and those who follow me in social media that even if you only have 10 followers, your 10 followers have 10 others, and they have 10, or they have 100, and they have 100, and they have 100. So messages tend to travel a lot faster and explode a lot more quickly and explosively. And this medium, I think, is going to be one of the biggest solutions when it comes to making aid work.
Well, that's interesting. You know, our current Secretary General of the United Nations tells a story about going with his mother when he was a very small child to the birthing huts in his village. And the women took their shoes off before they went into the huts, but before they went in, they would stand and look for several minutes at their shoes. And he said to his mother, why are they doing that? What's going on? And she said, because many of them will never see their shoes again. They won't come back out. And it's powerful to have a Secretary General whose personal experience led him to have his own personal commitment to this issue. Where do you think we'll be in 5 years, Christy? Do you think we're going to see major change in this? I mean, it seems this was the MDG that was most lagging, and I think people like the two of you have really done a lot to give it the push and momentum and to move it off the, it'll always be this way sense to something where there's no excuse for this anymore.
Well, one of the things that really, I think, the fact that got me to really move on this was that hundreds of thousands of women were dying every year, but that almost all of these deaths were preventable. There's not a lot of issues out there that you can say that about. So to me, that was incredibly promising from the start. It just was a matter of awareness and people not knowing and not being able to get behind someone and lacking the leadership at that time. Since that time, there's been incredible leadership. Sarah Brown, the former Prime Minister of the UK's wife, has been an incredible champion of these issues for the White Ribbon Alliance. Obviously, the Secretary General has been incredible to have a man and his wife, who is wonderful in her own right, to be there in the front lines, traveling to these countries, saying this is a priority of an issue. It's gotten a lot of other people around it because he says this is a priority for him. So that leadership is really important. I think we can make a huge difference. I really do. I'm looking for the hopeful stories, but in Bangladesh, in the last 10 years, the rate of maternal mortality has decreased 40%. And I was there 2.5 years ago, and then I returned just in June. And to hear that survey had come out and that progress had been made, 10 years is a really short amount of time in the relative history of our lives and of our existence. And so it is doable, and with technology, my goodness, to see just how cell phones and how they're being used by healthcare workers, and to see that, these tools, we went to home visits with a pilot project around a cellular device that BRAC was using. And the healthcare worker could take a picture of the mom in her home week to week so that she could look for signs of edema, and she could show the physical. And they would send that messaging back to an OB somewhere who would be able to give her information back what other signs to look for, what else to ask her. And, where you're in a place where there's just not the medical care that we need and that is warranted, that is making it's filling a huge, huge gap. And so that's very exciting because this is changing constantly and we're seeing it improve every day. So the potential is very exciting.
So you guys actually saw solutions as well as the problem when you were there.
Even in, I had never been to a developing country, and which I think is what shocked you when I said, yeah, I'll go to Bangladesh.
I'll get a passport.
It's going to be, it's going to be spring break. And in the first 2 days, it was really, really overwhelming, some of the situations that we saw. And I remember getting back into the van and sitting in traffic for 4 hours, and I finally turned to, I think it was either you or Aaron, and I said, do you guys ever get to the point where you're like, nothing is going to work? Why are we even trying? Nothing is going to solve this problem. And then 2 days later, we were in a different part of the country where some experimental programs had been in place, and the attitude was completely different because change had happened. Significant change had happened in just 2 or 3 years, and you could feel it was a palpable feeling in the air. And I got back in the van, I'm like, oh, this is why you help, is because there are solutions and there is work being done.
So are you getting through to men as well as women? I know your followers are primarily women, but how's this message translating, and is that part of the other piece that's going to break the it's been here forever cycle?
I'm pretty sure that my women are getting through to their men.
Aha!
If they follow my example by any means. But that, I think, was one of the key components to what I learned over there, was that's one of the biggest attitudes that has to change is the relationship between men and women in some cultures, for sure. That one specifically.
Yeah, the gender roles is still a big challenge, but there is incredible stuff happening there on a community-based level. In Ethiopia, I've seen amazing programs working with the faith community and working with the husbands and the brothers and the uncles to involve the entire community, so that when you're educating a woman, you're educating everybody at the same time, and so the benefits to the woman are incredible because these are communities oftentimes where she doesn't have the decision-making power, and so everybody needs to learn that this is the best decision. And oftentimes, you'll see the mom sort of sitting there in the middle of the group, and everybody else is talking and answering, and she's sort of sitting there quietly and nodding, and I'm sure praying that this is getting through to her family members because her fate depends on them. So that approach is incredibly important, and the question is always asked, what about the men and what is the men's role? It's incredibly important, and we need everybody to get involved. But, the woman-to-woman intimacy and sharing the story is what comes first, and we were a female crew, and so it helped us tremendously to be able to allow women to feel comfortable enough to share these intimate moments with us. And we have to work towards that equity piece in a big way, too.
So you're both moms, and what is it you'd like to see that would change for moms around the world over the next few years?
Do you want to answer first, or?
I think I would like for women to feel a little less threatened when it comes to speaking out online, especially. Speaking their opinions and their minds, especially in terms of as much as we suffer from gender inequalities, a lot of women are hard on other women, where I think if we could overlook our differences and the difference in our success levels, so much could happen with women if we were much more supportive of each other online. And I would hope in the next several years that more mothers would be empowered to come online unafraid to share their stories because of a horrible comment or a horrible website, and feel safe enough to speak out, because the more voices there are, the bigger the tidal wave, for good.
Great, it's a real movement.
And I would say, we named our organization Every Mother Counts, but it's really every girl, every woman counts. Adolescent girls are oftentimes the moms in the developing countries that I visit often, and we need to make sure that it's not just some women that survive childbirth. This is the red flag that says if we can't support a woman while she's giving life, then we don't support women. And so we need to make sure that every girl, every woman, every mother, that she matters, that she counts. So my goal is really to make sure that those stories, those individual stories are heard, so that then we can really rally as those of us who have a voice, who have the ability to speak out about these issues can be heard, because there are so many millions of girls and women who don't have that ability.
And for this audience, I know, Christy, you're beginning to think, how do you build social media into your work as well? Lessons learned that you're trying to apply to take this momentum forward?
Well, we're really relying on friends like Heather so far, who's advising us, but it's not, Erin, the executive director of Every Mother Counts, who's here. It's just really the two of us, and so we're starting to hire, and we're really looking for people in social media to help us manage this part of our business. Everybody in our space knows how important, how critical it is, and we know it is just from the little bit of time and effort we put into it, but we're looking to recruit people that can really help us take it to the next level. So that's an offer. If you visit our website, everymothercounts.org, there's more information about the position. But if you're looking for a job and you're interested in maternal and child health, we could really use you on our team.
And Heather, from your experience, the blogging community, when you take on an issue like this, do you need to keep refreshing it? What do you learn from your experience in terms of making something compelling?
Well, I do think you do need to repeat. I mean, that's just human nature. But I do think that the online community is unique in that we've lost our village, and a lot of us have mommy friends. I hate to use the word mommy, sorry. We have friends who are mothers only online. And that was true with my first child, all of my friends were online. And so there's a huge network of women out there wanting to help each other, wanting to support your cause, wanting to put a tutu on and run a marathon because your cause is requiring it such. And so, yes, they may need reminding, but there's such willingness on the part of all these people who are sitting behind their screens going, well, I'm at my job and there's no way else I can help. If I can send you some money, do you know what to do with it? If I can send you my story, do you know what to do with it? And so it's just such a great resource that just needs to be tapped.
And are you going to travel again?
I hope, for sure.
And
yes.
when's the marathon?
November 6th, and we'll be running it with a team of 10. New York City Marathon for Every Mother Counts.
I started running last week.
Well, I'd say you're not afraid of challenges. So a couple last questions. As we think about the UN this week, you guys have both made very compelling statements about this issue, and I think some people are frustrated that women's issues get talked a lot about, but we just never seem to make progress. What's the advice you'd give to keep an issue like this front and center?
I still feel that there needs to be more sort of consolidation amongst those of us who are in this space. There are a lot of people doing similar things but slightly different, and I think we, again, have our skill sets, and I think for us to be able to come together and, you know, this is an urgent situation, so we have to treat it like disaster relief a little bit, and we need to sort of say, I'll take this, you take this, and stay very closely connected and information share, but I think we really have to treat it as the emergency that it is. And there are so many of us who are, you know, we're all with the right intention, you know, going forward and fundraising and doing all these things, but it's too fragmented, and I think we really need to come together, I think now more than ever.
Heather?
Well, I was going to say, like, you know, using people like me, you know, like, I can network for you. I maybe can't get on the ground and administer aid, and I can't be a midwife, but I can give you my network, and I can give you my audience, and tapping into those resources. I think it was a brilliant move on her part, because so many of my audience had not known about this issue until I went on that trip and saw these photos and these stories. And so it's, I think, just tapping into those of us who do one thing well and can reach those audiences.
And for those in the audience who are in the nonprofit or the humanitarian world, what's the best way to share those stories in the blogging community, short of taking somebody like you to Bangladesh? What
things and making connections with popular bloggers and popular tweeters, and just really just reaching out.
So last question, what do your kids know about everything we've been talking about here, and what do they think?
Well, my daughter is pretty savvy. She's almost 8, and she knows that kind of her life is sort of what set me on this path, and that's an incredible bond that we have because of it. She understands, being almost 8, that there is something very important that I want to focus on, that I want to work towards. She understands that it's not fair that some moms don't have, or some children don't have their moms, and some moms don't have their children, and she gets that. And my son, he's in kindergarten, he's a bit younger, so it's a little bit harder, but he also kind of sees that there's something bigger out there, and there is something that we need to, all of us, contribute to. And I hope that my children will both be moved to do the kind of service that I've felt compelled to do. I'm sure that they will at some point, but I think that will be a part of it just will be part of their experience of being a human being on this planet, that's what we do for each other.
That's great. How old are yours, Heather?
Mine's 7.5 and 2, and the 7.5-year-old is just like, please don't put this on your website. That's usually her comment to me. And then when I talked to her about going to Bangladesh and some of the conditions I saw, and she's like, just like hurricanes and tornadoes and tsunamis, that doesn't happen in Salt Lake City, right? And I said, well, actually, this does happen in Salt Lake City. And that's something that I really wanted to hammer home to her and to my readers, was that this is a problem that spans everywhere.
Yeah, that's such an important point you made earlier, that the whole approach to understanding a safe motherhood isn't just something that happens elsewhere in the world.
Right.
Wonderful. And your son will eventually...
Oh, it's another daughter.
It's another daughter.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's your daughter.
Two.
She'll find out. That's great. Well, I hope everybody will join me in thanking these two remarkable mother women advocates.